you truly proud of what we have achieved together. We did what we came here to do, and so much more. This week, we inaugurate a new administration and pray for its success in keeping America safe and prosperous. We extend our best wishes, and we also want them to have luck, a very important word. I'd like to begin by thanking just a few of the amazing people who made our remarkable journey possible. First, let me express my overwhelming gratitude for the love and support of our spectacular First Lady, Melania. Let me also share my deepest appreciation to my daughter Ivanka, my son-in-law Jared, and to Barron, Don, Eric, Tiffany, and Lara. You fill my world with light and with joy. I also want to thank Vice President Mike Pence, his wonderful wife Karen, and the entire Pence family. Thank you as well to my Chief of Staff, Mark Meadows, the dedicated members of the White House staff, and the cabinet, and all of the incredible people across our administration who poured out their heart and soul to fight for America. I also want to take a moment to thank a truly exceptional group of people. The United States Secret Service. My family and I will forever be in your debt. My profound gratitude as well to everyone in the White House Military Office, the teams of Marine One and Air Force One, every member of the armed forces, and state and local law enforcement all across our country. Most of all, I want to thank the American people. To serve as your president has been an honor beyond description. Thank you for this extraordinary privilege, and that's what it is, a great privilege and a great honor. We must never forget that while Americans will always have our disagreements, we are a nation of incredible, decent, faithful, and peace-loving citizens who all want our country to thrive and flourish and be very, very successful and good. We are a truly magnificent nation. All Americans were horrified by the assault on our Capitol. Political violence is an attack on everything we cherish as Americans. It can never be tolerated. Now more than ever, we must unify around our shared values and rise above the partisan rancor and forge our common destiny. 4 years ago, I came to Washington as the only true outsider ever to win the presidency. I had not spent my career as a politician, but as a builder looking at open skylines and imagining infinite possibilities. I ran for president because I knew there were towering new summits for America just waiting to be scaled. I knew the potential for our nation was boundless as long as we put America first. So I left behind my former life and stepped into a very difficult arena, but an arena nevertheless with all sorts of potential if properly done. America had given me so much, and I wanted to give something back. Together with millions of hard-working patriots across this land, we built the greatest political movement in the history of our country. We also built the greatest economy in the history of the world. It was about America first because we all wanted to make America great again. We restored the principle that a nation exists to serve its citizens. Our agenda was not about right or left. It wasn't about Republican or Democrat, but about the good of a nation, and that means the whole nation. With the support and prayers of the American people, we achieved more than anyone thought possible. Nobody thought we could even come close. We passed the largest package of tax cuts and reforms in American history. We slashed more job-killing regulations than any administration had ever done before. We fixed our broken trade deals, withdrew from the horrible Trans-Pacific Partnership and the impossible Paris Climate Accord, renegotiated the one-sided South Korea deal, and we replaced NAFTA with the groundbreaking USMCA. That's Mexico and Canada, a deal that's worked out very, very well. Also, and very importantly, we imposed historic and monumental tariffs on China, made a great new deal with China. But before the ink was even dry, we and the whole world got hit with the China virus. Our trade relationship was rapidly changing. Billions and billions of dollars were pouring into the U.S. but the virus forced us to go in a different direction. The whole world suffered, but America outperformed other countries economically because of our incredible economy and the economy that we built. Without the foundations and footings, it wouldn't have worked out this way. We wouldn't have some of the best numbers we've ever had. We also unlocked our energy resources and became the world's #1 producer of oil and natural gas, by far. Powered by these policies, we built the greatest economy in the history of the world. We reignited America's job creation and achieved record low unemployment for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, women, almost everyone. Income soared, wages boomed, the American dream was restored, and millions were lifted from poverty in just a few short years. It was a miracle. The stock market set one record after another, with 148 stock market highs during this short period of time, and boosted the retirements and pensions of hardworking citizens all across our nation. 401ks are at a level they've never been at before. We've never seen numbers like we've seen, and that's before the pandemic and after the pandemic. We rebuilt the American manufacturing base, opened up thousands of new factories, and brought back the beautiful phrase, made in the USA. To make life better for working families, we doubled the child tax credit and signed the largest ever expansion of funding for child care and development. We joined with the private sector to secure commitments to train more than 16 million American workers for the jobs of tomorrow. When our nation was hit with the terrible pandemic, we produced not one, but 2 vaccines with record-breaking speed, and more will quickly follow. They said it couldn't be done, but we did it. They called it a medical miracle, and that's what they're calling it right now, a medical miracle. Another administration would have taken 3, 4, 5, maybe even up to 10 years to develop a vaccine. We did it in 9 months. We grieve for every life lost, and we pledge in their memory to wipe out this horrible pandemic once and for all. When the virus took its brutal toll on the world's economy, we launched the fastest economic recovery our country has ever seen. We passed nearly $4 trillion in economic relief, saved or supported over 50 million jobs, and slashed the unemployment rate in half. These are numbers that our country has never seen before. We created choice and transparency in health care, stood up to Big Pharma in so many ways, but especially in our effort to get favored nations clauses added, which will give us the lowest prescription drug prices anywhere in the world. We passed VA choice, VA accountability, right to try, and landmark criminal justice reform. We confirmed 3 new justices of the United States Supreme Court. We appointed nearly 300 federal judges to interpret our Constitution as written. For years, the American people pleaded with Washington to finally secure the nation's borders. I am pleased to say we answered that plea and achieved the most secure border in U.S. history. We have given our brave border agents and heroic ICE officers the tools they need to do their jobs better than they have ever done before, and to enforce our laws and keep America safe. We proudly leave the next administration with the strongest and most robust border security measures ever put into place. This includes historic agreements with Mexico, Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador, along with more than 450 miles of powerful new wall. We restored American strength at home and American leadership abroad. The world respects us again. Please don't lose that respect. We reclaimed our sovereignty by standing up for America at the United Nations and withdrawing from the one-sided global deals that never served our interest. And NATO countries are now paying hundreds of billions of dollars more than when I arrived just a few years ago. It was very unfair. We were paying the cost for the world. Now the world is helping us. And perhaps most importantly of all, with nearly $3 trillion, we fully rebuilt the American military, all made in the USA. We launched the first new branch of the United States Armed Forces in 75 years, the Space Force. And last spring, I stood at Kennedy Space Center in Florida and watched as American astronauts returned to space on American rockets for the first time in many, many years. We revitalized our alliances and rallied the nations of the world to stand up to China like never before. We obliterated the ISIS caliphate and ended the wretched life of its founder and leader, al-Baghdadi. We stood up to the oppressive Iranian regime and killed the world's top terrorist, Iranian butcher Qasem Soleimani. We recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel and recognized Israeli sovereignty over the Golan Heights. As a result of our bold diplomacy and principled realism, we achieved a series of historic peace deals in the Middle East. Nobody believed it could happen. The Abraham Accords opened the doors to a future of peace and harmony, not violence and bloodshed. It is the dawn of a new Middle East, and we are bringing our soldiers home. I am especially proud to be the first president in decades who has started no new wars. Above all, we have reasserted the sacred idea that in America, the government answers to the people. Our guiding light, our North Star, our unwavering conviction has been that we are here to serve the noble, everyday citizens of America. Our allegiance is not to the special interests, corporations, or global entities. It's to our children, our citizens, and to our nation itself. As president, my top priority, my constant concern, has always been the best interests of American workers and American families. I did not seek the easiest course. By far, it was actually the most difficult. I did not seek the path that would get the least criticism. I took on the tough battles, the hardest fights, the most difficult choices, because that's what you elected me to do. Your needs were my first and last unyielding focus. This, I hope, will be our greatest legacy. Together, we put the American people back in charge of our country. We restored self-government. We restored the idea that in America, no one is forgotten because everyone matters and everyone has a voice. We fought for the principle that every citizen is entitled to equal dignity, equal treatment, and equal rights because we are all made equal by God. Everyone is entitled to be treated with respect, to have their voice heard, and to have their government listen. You are loyal to your country, and my administration was always loyal to you. We worked to build a country in which every citizen could find a great job and support their wonderful families. We fought for the communities where every American could be safe and schools where every child could learn. We promoted a culture where our laws would be upheld, our heroes honored, our history preserved, and law-abiding citizens are never taken for granted. Americans should take tremendous satisfaction in all that we have achieved together. It's incredible. Now, as I leave the White House, I have been reflecting on the dangers that threaten the priceless inheritance we all share. As the world's most powerful nation, America faces constant threats and challenges from abroad. But the greatest danger we face is a loss of confidence in ourselves, a loss of confidence in our national greatness. A nation is only as strong as its spirit. We are only as dynamic as our pride. We are only as vibrant as the faith that beats in the hearts of our people. No nation can long thrive that loses faith in its own values, history, and heroes. For these are the very sources of our unity and our vitality. What has always allowed America to prevail and triumph over the great challenges of the past has been an unyielding and unashamed conviction in the nobility of our country and its unique purpose in history. We must never lose this conviction. We must never forsake our belief in America. The key to national greatness lies in sustaining and instilling our shared national identity. That means focusing on what we have in common, the heritage that we all share. At the center of this heritage is also a robust belief in free expression, free speech, and open debate. Only if we forget who we are and how we got here could we ever allow political censorship and blacklisting to take place in America. It's not even thinkable. Shutting down free and open debate violates our core values and most enduring traditions. In America, we don't insist on absolute conformity or enforce rigid orthodoxies and punitive speech codes. We just don't do that. America is not a timid nation of tame souls who need to be sheltered and protected from those with whom we disagree. That's not who we are. It will never be who we are. For nearly 250 years...
Donald J. Trump making his final speech. That was yesterday. The most interesting thing, he never mentioned the incoming president. He just talked about the incoming administration. Very interesting time that we are living in. 2 weeks after a huge mob attacked Capitol Hill. Well, not Capitol Hill, but the U.S. Capitol, disrupting proceedings that were meant to confirm the new administration. 5 people were left dead. Some of them are still nursing injuries. And that's why we are giving you live coverage and analysis of what's happening in the U.S. We are living in a very interesting time where the outgoing president, Donald J. Trump, still does not recognize President-elect Joe Biden and his administration. President Trump there saying that he's not going anywhere, he'll still be around. And this will be a very interesting time to see Trump, the citizen. Well, we want now to link up with BBC, and what you can see actually on your screen is what is happening at the U.S. Capitol, where plans are underway to swear in and inaugurate the new U.S. president together with his Vice President Kamala Harris. We are keeping an eye on Washington. It is under severe lockdown. More than 25,000 military officers are on standby to ensure that the streets of Washington are safe. Just 2 weeks ago, a serious insurrection took place in the U.S. seat of power, where 5 people were killed. The FBI is not leaving anything to chance. They have put enough security measures to ensure that the event takes on smoothly, and the swearing in goes on uninterrupted. Already, we have seen the members of the far-right group QAnon saying that they are not ready to let up and urging their members to stand by for something big. Nobody actually understands what they mean by this. However, time is moving on. Anytime from now, we expect to see the president-elect Joe Biden being ushered in from Blair House, and I understand that he has already left Blair House. This is according to the U.S. tradition, the incoming president is supposed to spend the night at Blair House, which is on 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, not far off, actually. It's a walking distance to the White House, which is going to be his official residence for the next 4 years. And then thereafter, he'll walk to the Capitol, the U.S. Capitol, where the swearing-in process or celebrations are taking place. Minimum number of people have been invited, less than 1,000 actually. Among them, the former U.S. president, the 44th president, Mr. Barack Obama, together with his family. And also the former president, the 43rd president of the U.S., Mr. George Bush, together with his wife, Laura Bush, are attending the function as well, together with a number of senators as well as House of Representative members and governors gracing this occasion. But the biggest number of attendees are security, who are actually about 25,000 of them, spread out around Washington, D.C. to ensure that any form of violence is suppressed and ensure that the event takes place, peacefully. And as you can see on your screen, that's the 44th president of the U.S., on your extreme left, that is Barack Obama, having a good time there with what you would assume to be his acquaintances. That's what we are following up. And of course, here in the studio, we're also relooking at the Joe Biden's presidency, as well as the presidency of the outgoing president, Mr. Donald Trump. Ex-Iraqi is a regular member here. We were with him during the election night. We spent almost the whole night here, trying to look at exactly all the angles of the American elections. Well, here he's with us again as we relook into the inauguration of Joe Biden. He's a lecturer at the UN of the Nairobi University. He's good at business as well as economic issues. He has lived in the US. He understands the American governance system as well as its political system. Thank you so very much, Dr. XN Iraqi, for joining us here. Sure. You agree with me that this quite extraordinary time, outgoing President Donald Trump still does not recognize Joe Biden as a duly elected President of the United States of America. How is this likely to affect Joe Biden's presidency?
Good afternoon or good evening, Kenyans. The first agenda item for Joe Biden as the new president would be to undo what Trump has done for 4 years. And that is going to be very difficult work for him. But he has one big weapon or arsenal at his disposal: the American goodwill and the whole world goodwill. Everybody is giving him support, whether you're an American or non-American. As a matter of fact, some Kenyans were asking to me today why we are not being given a holiday so that we can watch Joe Biden becoming the next president of the US. So I think he has a task ahead of him. He has to think about the economy that has been battered by COVID-19, the damaged American economy, and a lot of infighting between political parties in the US, the racial lines, black and white. Remember that in addition to that, Donald Trump rattled a lot of international relations. Iran, North Korea, China. He even one day called Africa a shithole.
Yep.
So this is the agenda that Joe Biden has to address. And it might be important to remember that one of the words that Donald Trump used in his speech, farewell speech,
yep,
and he emphasized, was the word luck. And he said it's a very important word.
Yeah.
Because if you remember the regime of Donald Trump, it was almost obvious he was going to become, or he was going to get a second term until something unlucky happened, which is COVID-19. So we hope that as soon as Joe Biden takes over, there will be nothing unlucky like that that is going to derail him from achieving his political and economic objectives.
You see, you're talking about, Joe Biden, spending the next 4 years trying to undo what his predecessor, Donald Trump, has done. But one thing that you have to realize is that, the U.S. is facing tremendous challenges. Number one, as we speak now, almost 400,000 people have died because of coronavirus. Their economy is expected to take a dip by about, the growth is likely to drop by almost 3.5% according to IMF analysis. Another thing is that, the U.S. foreign policy is not as strong as it used to be because the former administration or the outgoing administration of J. Trump, has somehow rattled America's allies, from the European Union, to countries like, the Arab nations. And so, how then do you ensure that you put the train back on track and at the same time ensure that you outline and achieve your agenda that you set out to achieve?
I think the incoming president has tried to do that. And one of the approaches he has used is the type of the people he has put in his administration. One of the things that I've been very keen is finding out who has become or who has been given a certain post by Joe Biden. Who is his Secretary for Foreign Affairs or Secretary of State? Who is going to be who will be his ambassadors to the United Nations? So one of the easiest ways to rebuild the confidence in the American economic system and the political system and build bridges across other nations is to have a very good team. And I think Joe Biden has tried to do that by getting veterans, some of them pulled from Obama administration, people who have gone through a lot of experiences, and people who believe in his image or in his agenda. And I believe that given time, they will be able to overcome all the challenges ahead of them. And once again, I must emphasize, because they have a lot of goodwill from the American people and from the rest of the world.
What you can see on your screen actually is we have seen the Vice President-elect Kamala Harris, who is the immediate senator for California. She actually resigned on Monday so that she can take up her position or her job as the vice president. You can see her there, well dressed in a flowing blue dress, if I'm allowed to say that. And it's a moment to shine, actually, which should be coming shortly. We have also seen, the outgoing Vice President, Mike Pence, actually has also made his way to the U.S. Capitol. Kamala Harris actually making history as the first female Vice President in the U.S. and, of course, the first woman of color, to assume to such a high position in the U.S. The second in command, and commanding, of course, the world's biggest economy, and of course, the world's biggest military. Quite an achievement for the former California senator. And as you can see on your screen, Kamala Harris actually looks completely excited. This definitely is not a main achievement for women of color as well as the women movement in the U.S.
It's a very exciting moment for Kamala Harris. She's the first woman to become a vice president in the U.S., which we say is heartbeat from the presidency. But what is more exciting about her position is her background. Her father was a black, her mother was Indian.
Yeah.
A very rare combination of marriage, not just in the US, but also in Kenya. And it is that...
So, sorry for stepping on your shoes. Like, as you can see, this is Joe Biden together with his wife, Jill Biden. Of course, emerging out of the Blair House. Well, I think this is the U.S. Capitol, actually. This is not a Blair House. This looks to me like the U.S. Capitol. Absolutely, this is the U.S. Capitol, where Joe Biden, together with his wife, Jill Biden, now on their way to take the oath of office. Again, as you can see, President-elect Joe Biden walking hand in hand with his wife, Jill Biden, as they proceed to take the oath of office. As you can see now, it's approaching well past, actually about 15 minutes past 12 o'clock in the U.S. And so you do not expect this event to tally on for too long. So from here, the first family is expected to just cross over to the White House, where a brief introduction to the House will be done, and thereafter a speech is expected to be made outlining his agenda in the next 4 years. And before I disrupted you, you were talking about, the achievement of Kamala Harris.
Yes, I was saying that her background is very unique. Her father was black from Jamaica, and her mother was from India. A very rare combination, or a very rare type of marriage, not just in the US, but in Kenya. And probably that is one of the characteristics of Joe Biden's incoming administration. Very diverse, reflecting the American face or the American people. Because if you have such a diverse cabinet, such a diverse administration, which reflects the American society or the American people, then you expect to find a lot of support.
Yeah. Nobody
is going to feel marginalized. And that is what we expect from not just the Joe Biden's administration, but any other administration. It should always reflect the people who are ruled, or who the person is leading.
Well, as you can see, the army there playing healthy journal to alert the invited guest that the president-elect is finally ready for the swearing-in ceremony. We'll be taking you straight to Washington, D.C., so that you can actually see for yourself. And as you can see, they have made their way to the stage. That is President-elect Joe Biden with his wife, Jill Biden, walking to the stage to take the oath of office. Remember, in 2016, he was here, the same stage, when the administration of Barack Obama was bidding farewell to the incoming administration of Donald Trump. Unfortunately, the outgoing president will not be here to usher in his predecessor. Instead, he's taken a flight, not actually a flight here, but he has flown to Florida, to his resort in Mar-a-Lago, where he is expected to be playing a round of golf with his friends. President-elect and Vice President-elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris on stage, ready for the swearing-in ceremony to usher in the 46th presidency in the United States, facing numerous challenges. Today, the U.S. is expected to record over 400,000 people in terms of coronavirus deaths. And now, let's listen in to the speakers as we wait for the swearing-in ceremony. We are here and we'll be back. Stay here.
Senator Amy Klobuchar.
Presidents, leaders from abroad, and a whole bunch of Bidens. America, welcome to the 59th presidential inauguration, where in just a few moments, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris will take their solemn oaths. This ceremony is the culmination of 244 years of a democracy. It is the moment when leaders brought to this stage by the will of the people promise to be faithful to our Constitution, to cherish it and defend it. It is the moment when they become, as we all should be, guardians of our country. Have we become too jaded, too accustomed to the ritual of the passing of the torch of democracy to truly appreciate what a blessing and a privilege it is to witness this moment? I think not. 2 weeks ago, when an angry, violent mob staged an insurrection and desecrated this temple of our democracy, it awakened us to our responsibilities as Americans. This is the day when our democracy picks itself up, brushes off the dust, and does what America always does: goes forward as a nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. This conveyance of a sacred trust between our leaders and our people takes place in front of this shining Capitol dome for a reason. When Abraham Lincoln gave his first inaugural address in front of this Capitol, the dome was only partially constructed, braced by ropes of steel. He promised he would finish it. He was criticized for spending funds on it during the Civil War. To those critics, he replied, "If the people see the Capitol going on, it is a sign we intend the Union shall go on." And it did, and it will. Generations of Americans gave their lives to preserve our republic in this place. Great legislation to protect civil rights and economic security and lead the world was debated and crafted under this dome. Now it falls on all of us, not just the two leaders we are inaugurating today, to take up the torch of our democracy, not as a weapon of political arson, but as an instrument for good. We pledge today never to take our democracy for granted as we celebrate its remarkable strength. We celebrate its resilience, its grit. We celebrate the ordinary people doing extraordinary things for our nation, the doctors and nurses on the front line of this pandemic, the officers in the Capitol, a new generation never giving up hope for justice. We celebrate a new president, Joe Biden, who vows to restore the soul of America and cross the river of our divides to a higher plane. And we celebrate our first African American, first Asian American, and first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, who stands on the shoulders of so many on this platform who have forged the way to this day. When she takes the oath of office, little girls and boys across the world will know that anything and everything is possible. And in the end, that is America, our democracy, a country of so much good. And today, on these Capitol steps and before this glorious field of flags, we rededicate ourselves to its cause. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce to you the senator who has worked with me and so many others to make this ceremony possible, my friend and the chair of the inaugural committee, Missouri Senator Roy Blunt.
Well, I should have known when Senator Klobuchar got involved, at least there'd be a touch of snow up here this morning. Of all the things we'd considered, I don't think snow was on my agenda until I walked out the door a moment ago. But thank you, Senator Klobuchar, and thanks to the other members of the Joint Congressional Committee on the Inauguration as we officially begin the 59th inaugural ceremony. I also want to thank the Joint Committee staff and our partners, particularly our security partners, for the way they've dealt with unprecedented circumstances. When I chaired the inauguration 4 years ago, I shared President Reagan's 1981 description of this event as commonplace and miraculous. Commonplace because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Miraculous because we've done it every 4 years since 1789. Americans have celebrated this moment during war, during depression, and now during pandemic. Once again, all three branches of our government come together as the Constitution envisions. Once again, we renew our commitment to our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union. That theme for this inauguration, our determined democracy, forging a more perfect union, was announced by the Joint Committee before the election with the belief that the United States can only fulfill its promise and set an example for others if we are always working to be better than we have been. The Constitution established that determined democracy with its first three words, declaring the people as the source of the government. The Articles of Confederation hadn't done that. The Magna Carta hadn't done that. Only the Constitution says the government exists because the people are the source of the reason it exists. They immediately followed those first three words with the words to form a more perfect union. The founders did not say to form a perfect union. They did not claim that in our new country nothing would need to be improved. Fortunately, they understood that always working to be better would be the hallmark of a great democracy. The freedoms we have today, the nation we have today, is not here just because it happened, and they aren't complete. A great democracy working through the successes and failures of our history, striving to be better than it had been. And we are more than we have been, and we are less than we hope to be. The assault on our Capitol at this very place just 2 weeks ago reminds us that a government designed to balance and check itself is both fragile and resilient. During the last year, the pandemic challenged our free and open society and called for extraordinary determination and sacrifice, and still challenges us today. Meeting that challenge head on have been and are healthcare workers, scientists, first responders, essential frontline workers, and so many others we depend on in so many ways. Today we come to this moment. People all over the world, as we're here, are watching and will watch what we do here. Our government comes together. The Congress and the courts join the transition of executive responsibility. One political party more pleased today and on every inaugural day than the other. But this is not a moment of division, it's a moment of unification. A new administration begins and brings with it a new beginning. And with that, our great national debate goes forward, and a determined democracy will continue to be essential in pursuit of a more perfect union and a better future for all Americans. What a privilege for me to join you today. Thank you. I'm pleased to call
Roy Blunt there, who is the only Republican who will be speaking today, stressing unity, which is the theme of this inauguration that Joe Biden has asked for.
And the pledge to our flag.
It is something that Democrats say can't happen until there is accountability for what happened in that Capitol building 2 weeks ago. And they are wiping down the plinth for Father Lee O'Donovan, who will be delivering the invocation. He is a friend of the Biden family, a Jesuit, and he presided over the funeral of Joe Biden's son, Beau.
Gracious and merciful God, at this sacred time we come before you in need, indeed on our knees. But we come still more with hope and with our eyes raised anew to the vision of a more perfect union in our land, a union of all our citizens to promote the general welfare and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. We are a people of many races, creeds, and colors, national backgrounds, cultures, and styles, now far more numerous and on land much vaster than when Archbishop John Carroll wrote his prayer for the inauguration of George Washington 232 years ago. Archbishop Carroll prayed that you, O Creator of all, would assist with your Holy Spirit of counsel and fortitude the President of these United States, that his administration may be conducted in righteousness and be eminently useful to your people. Today we confess our past failures to live according to our vision of equality, inclusion, and freedom for all. Yet we resolutely commit still more now to renewing the vision, to caring for one another in word and deed, especially the least fortunate among us, and so becoming a light for the world. There is a power in each and every one of us that lives by turning to every other one of us, a thrust of the Spirit to cherish and care and stand by others, and above all, those most in need. It is called love, and its path is to give ever more of itself. Today, it is called American patriotism, born not of power and privilege, but of care for the common good, with malice toward none and with charity for all. For our new president, we beg of you the wisdom Solomon sought when he knelt before you and prayed for an understanding heart so that I can govern your people and know the difference between right and wrong. We trust in the counsel of the letter of James. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Pope Francis has reminded us how important it is to dream together. By ourselves, he wrote, we risk seeing mirages, things that are not there. Dreams, on the other hand, are built together. Be with us, holy mystery of love, as we dream together. Help us under our new president to reconcile the people of our land, restore our dream and invest it with peace and justice and the joy that is the overflow of love. To the glory of your name, forever, amen.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the presentation of our national colors by the Armed Forces Color Guard, the singing of our national anthem, and for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ladies and gentlemen, here for the singing of our national anthem, accompanied by the President's own United States Marine Band, please welcome Lady Gaga.
Lady Gaga in, by Lady Gaga standards, a relatively subdued inaugural outfit, appropriate for the moment.
She certainly brought down the house, and by Lady Gaga standards, boy, she was pretty understated, but it was a great recitation of our national anthem.
Now we have Andrea Hall reading the Pledge of Allegiance.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
What you are all about to be part of, America, is a historic moment of firsts. To administer the oath, to our first African American, our first Asian American, and our first woman vice president, Kamala Harris, it is my great privilege to welcome to the inaugural stage the first Latina to ever serve on the Supreme Court of the United States of America, Justice Sonia Sotomayor.
Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
I, Kamala Davy Harris, do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
That I will well and faithfully discharge.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office upon which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Please welcome Jennifer Lopez to perform This Land Is Your Land and America the Beautiful, accompanied by members of the President's Own United States Marine Band.
Compilation there of This Land and America the Beautiful from Jennifer Lopez, who has been an outspoken advocate of how the coronavirus has disproportionately affected Hispanics in America, and they're taking her place as the most influential Latin American entertainer in the country at the moment.
It is now my distinct honor to introduce the Chief
Senator Klobuchar, by the way, known for her sense of humor.
United States, John Roberts, to administer the presidential oath to the next President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden.
Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the oath of office, followed by musical honors.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., do solemnly swear.
I, Joseph Robinette Biden, Jr., do solemnly swear.
That I will faithfully execute.
That I will faithfully execute.
The office of President of the United States.
Office of President of the United States.
And will, to the best of my ability.
Will, to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
Preserve, protect, and defend.
The Constitution of the United States.
The Constitution of the United States.
So help you God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. President.
Short and sweet. Joe Biden has waited his entire political career for that moment. It took less than a minute, and the Chief Justice of the United States declared Joe Biden President of the United States at 11:48 in the morning. Technically, he is not president for another 11 minutes. Under the Constitution, it is absolutely clear. One person is president until midday, and the next person takes over from that. But I suspect nobody is quibbling with that right now. For the sake of 11 minutes, Joe Biden has just been called President of the United States. This is the man who has wanted this for his entire political life. He tried 2 times and failed. The 3rd time's a charm. Joe Biden, the 46th President of the United States of America. Well, we seem to be taking a little pause now where they have all been asked to take a seat. I'm not sure if they're being asked to wait for 10 minutes until he is actually president, but there is some kind of a pause we would be expecting at this moment. I'm not quite sure whether we call him the president or whether we call him the president-elect. I have Amanda Renteria with me, a Democratic strategist and who worked on Hillary Clinton's campaign back in 2016, joining us from California. Amanda, there is a little bit of a pause. There is this we're in this slightly peculiar moment. They're ahead of schedule.
That's right. These are the moments where, when you're behind the scenes and you work so hard to get every minute right, you're rarely ahead of schedule, but here we are. We're ahead of schedule, and no doubt we're going to end this administration again in a quite unusual way. But listen, you feel the sense of energy and hope and new perspective and voices on that platform,
we have
and it makes all the difference here.
It is now my great privilege and high honor.
Let's just take a listen to Amy Klobuchar.
The first person to officially introduce the 46th President of the United States, Joseph R. Biden, Jr.
Chief Justice Roberts, Vice President Harris, Speaker Pelosi, Leader Schumer, Leader McConnell, Vice President Pence, my distinguished guests, my fellow Americans. This is America's day. This is democracy's day, a day of history and hope, of renewal and resolve. Through a crucible for the ages, America has been tested anew, and America has risen to the challenge. Today, we celebrate the triumph not of a candidate, but of a cause, the cause of democracy. The people, the will of the people has been heard, and the will of the people has been heeded. We've learned again that democracy is precious. Democracy is fragile. And at this hour, my friends, democracy has prevailed. So now, on this hallowed ground where just a few days ago, violence sought to shake the Capitol's very foundation, we come together as one nation, under God, indivisible, to carry out the peaceful transfer of power as we have for more than 2 centuries. As we look ahead in our uniquely American way, restless, bold, optimistic, and set our sights on the nation we know we can be and we must be. I thank my predecessors of both parties for their presence here today. I thank them from the bottom of my heart. And I know the resilience of our Constitution and the strength of our nation, as does President Carter, who I spoke with last night, who cannot be with us today, but whom we salute for his lifetime in service. I've just taken the sacred oath each of those patriots have taken, the oath first sworn by George Washington. But the American story depends not on any one of us, not on some of us, but on all of us, on we the people who seek a more perfect union. This is a great nation. We are good people. And over the centuries, through storm and strife, in peace and in war, we've come so far, but we still have far to go. We'll press forward with speed and urgency, for we have much to do in this winter of peril and significant possibilities. Much to repair, much to restore, much to heal, much to build, and much to gain. Few people in our nation's history have been more challenged or found a time more challenging or difficult than the time we're in now. Once-in-a-century virus that silently stalks the country. It's taken as many lives in 1 year as America lost in all of World War II. Millions of jobs have been lost. Hundreds of thousands of businesses closed. A cry for racial justice, some 400 years in the making, moves us. The dream of justice for all will be deferred no longer. A cry for survival comes from the planet itself. A cry that can't be any more desperate or any more clear. And now, a rise of political extremism, white supremacy, domestic terrorism, that we must confront and we will defeat. To overcome these challenges, to restore the soul and secure the future of America, requires so much more than words. It requires the most elusive of all things in a democracy: unity. Unity. In another January, on New Year's Day in 1863, Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation. When he put pen to paper, the president said, and I quote, "If my name ever goes down into history, it'll be for this act, and my whole soul is in it." My whole soul is in it. Today, on this January day, my whole soul is in this. Bringing America together, uniting our people, uniting our nation. And I ask every American to join me in this cause. Uniting to fight the foes we face: anger, resentment and hatred, extremism, lawlessness, violence, disease, joblessness, and hopelessness. With unity, we can do great things, important things. We can right wrongs. We can put people to work in good jobs. We can teach our children in safe schools. We can overcome the deadly virus. We can reward work and rebuild the middle class and make health care secure for all. We can deliver racial justice, and we can make America once again the leading force for good in the world. I know speaking of unity can sound to some like a foolish fantasy these days. I know the forces that divide us are deep and they are real. But I also know they are not new. Our history has been a constant struggle between the American ideal that we're all are created equal and the harsh, ugly reality that racism, nativism, fear, demonization have long torn us apart. The battle is perennial, and victory is never assured. Through Civil War, the Great Depression, World War, 9/11, through struggle, sacrifice, and setbacks, our better angels have always prevailed. In each of these moments, enough of us have come together to carry all of us forward. And we can do that now. History, faith, and reason show the way of unity. We can see each other not as adversaries, but as neighbors. We can treat each other with dignity and respect. We can join forces, stop the shouting, and lower the temperature. For without unity, there is no peace, only bitterness and fury. No progress, only exhausting outrage. No nation, only a state of chaos. This is our historic moment of crisis and challenge, and unity is the path forward. And we must meet this moment as the United States of America. If we do that, I guarantee you we will not fail. We have never, ever, ever, ever failed in America when we've acted together. And so today, at this time, in this place, let's start afresh, all of us. Let's begin to listen to one another again, hear one another, see one another, show respect to one another. Politics doesn't have to be a raging fire, destroying everything in its path. Every disagreement doesn't have to be a cause for total war. And we must reject the culture in which facts themselves are manipulated and even manufactured. My fellow Americans, we have to be different than this. America has to be better than this. And I believe America is so much better than this. Just look around. Here we stand in the shadow of the Capitol Dome, as was mentioned earlier, completed amid the Civil War, when the Union itself was literally hanging in the balance. Yet we endured. We prevailed. Here we stand, looking out on the great mall where Dr. King spoke of his dream. Here we stand where 108 years ago, at another inaugural, thousands of protesters tried to block brave women marching for the right to vote. And today, we mark the swearing in of the first woman in American history elected to national office, Vice President Kamala Harris. Don't tell me things can't change. Here we stand across the Potomac from Arlington Cemetery, where heroes who gave the last full measure of devotion rest in eternal peace. And here we stand, just days after a riotous mob thought they could use violence to silence the will of the people, to stop the work of our democracy, to drive us from this sacred ground. It did not happen, It will never happen. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. Not ever. To all those who supported our campaign, I'm humbled by the faith you place in us. To all those who did not support us, let me say this. Hear me out as we move forward. Take a measure of me and my heart. If you still disagree, so be it. That's democracy. That's America. The right to dissent peaceably within the guardrails of our republic is perhaps this nation's greatest strength. Yet hear me clearly. Disagreement must not lead to disunion. And I pledge this to you. I will be a president for all Americans. All Americans. And I promise you, I will fight as hard for those who did not support me as for those who did. Many centuries ago, St. Augustine, a saint of my church, wrote that a people was a multitude defined by the common objects of their love. Defined by the common objects of their love. What are the common objects we as Americans love that define us as Americans? I think we know. Opportunity, security, liberty, dignity, respect, honor, and yes, the truth. Recent weeks and months have taught us a painful lesson. There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, and especially as leaders. Leaders who have pledged to honor our Constitution and protect our nation, to defend the truth and defeat the lies. Look, I understand that many of my fellow Americans view the future with fear and trepidation. I understand they worry about their jobs. I understand, like my dad, they lay at night staring at the ceiling, wondering, can I keep my health care? Can I pay my mortgage? Thinking about their families, about what comes next. I promise you, I get it. But the answer is not to turn inward, to retreat into competing factions, distrusting those who don't look like you, or worship the way you do, or don't get their news from the same sources you do. We must end this uncivil war that pits red against blue, rural versus urban, conservative versus liberal. We can do this if we open our souls instead of hardening our hearts, if we show a little tolerance and humility, and if we're willing to stand in the other person's shoes, as my mom would say, just for a moment, stand in their shoes. Because here's the thing about life. There's no accounting for what fate will deal you. Some days, when you need a hand. There are other days when we're called to lend a hand. That's how it has to be. That's what we do for one another. And if we are this way, our country will be stronger, more prosperous, more ready for the future. And we can still disagree. My fellow Americans, in the work ahead of us, we're going to need each other. We need all our strength to persevere through this dark winter. We're entering what may be the toughest and deadliest period of the virus. We must set aside politics and finally face this pandemic as one nation. One nation. And I promise you this, as the Bible says, weeping may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning. We will get through this together. Together. Look, folks, all my colleagues I serve with in the House and the Senate up here, We all understand the world is watching all of us today. So here's my message to those beyond our borders. America has been tested, and we've come out stronger for it. We will repair our alliances and engage with the world once again, not to meet yesterday's challenges, but today's and tomorrow's challenges. And we'll lead not merely by the example of our power, but by the power of our example. We'll be a strong and trusted partner for peace, progress, and security. Look, you all know we've been through so much in this nation. And in my first act as president, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silent prayer. Remember all those who we lost in this past year to the pandemic. Those 400,000 fellow Americans, moms, dads, husbands, wives, sons, daughters, friends, neighbors, and co-workers. We'll honor them for becoming the people and the nation we know we can and should be. So I ask you, let's say a silent prayer for those who've lost their lives and those left behind, and for our country. Amen. Folks, this is a time of testing. We face an attack on our democracy and on truth, a raging virus, growing inequity, the sting of systemic racism, a climate in crisis, America's role in the world. Any one of these would be enough to challenge us in profound ways. But the fact is, we face them all at once, presenting this nation with one of the gravest responsibilities we've had. Now we're going to be tested. Are we going to step up, all of us? It's time for boldness, for there's so much to do. And this is certain. I promise you, we will be judged, you and I, by how we resolve these cascading crises of our era. We will rise to the occasion is the question. Will we master this rare and difficult hour? Will we meet our obligations and pass along a new and better world to our children? I believe we must. I'm sure you do as well. I believe we will. And when we do, we'll write the next great chapter in the history of the United States of America, the American story. A story that might sound something like a song that means a lot to me. It's called American Anthem. There's one verse that stands out, at least for me, and it goes like this. The work and prayers of century have brought us to this day. What shall be our legacy? What will our children say? Let me know in my heart when my days are through. America, America, I gave my best to you. Let's us add our own work and prayers to the unfolding story of our great nation. If we do this, then when our days are through, our children and our children's children will say of us, they gave their best, they did their duty, they healed a broken land. My fellow Americans, I close the day where I began, with the sacred oath. Before God and all of you, I give you my word. I will always level with you. I will defend the Constitution. I'll defend our democracy. I'll defend America. And I'll give all of you, keep everything I do in your service, thinking not of power, but of possibilities, not of personal interest, but the public good. And together, we shall write an American story of hope, not fear, of unity, not division, of light, not darkness, a story of decency and dignity, love and healing, greatness and goodness. May this be the story that guides us, the story that inspires us, and the story that tells ages yet to come that we answered the call of history. We met the moment. Democracy and hope, truth and justice did not die on our watch but thrived. That America secured liberty at home and stood once again as a beacon to the world. That is what we owe our forebears, one another, and generation to follow. So, with purpose and resolve, we turn to those tasks of our time, sustained by faith, driven by conviction, and devoted to one another and the country we love with all our hearts. May God bless America, and may God protect our troops. Thank you, America.
Joseph R. Biden, who is now the 46th President of the United States of America, with his inaugural speech in which he sought unity. He talked about unity not just as the end, but as the means to healing the country. He was honest about the challenges that America faces, and particularly about the pandemic. He talked about this as a winter of peril, but called for all Americans to help each other. There are days when you lend a hand, there are days when you need a hand. And he asked Americans to come together in this moment of peril, of tragedy, as he called it, and laid out the huge things that the country has to face, but that also he has to face, that he, as the next president of the United States, now has to deal with. He became president halfway through his inaugural speech. He became president at 12:01 local time. Here is Garth Brooks, who will be singing Amazing Grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. When we've been there 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun. If I can ask you to sing this last verse with me, not just the people here, but the people at home, at work, as one, united. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see.
Amen.
Amazing Grace, karaoke style, at an inauguration. Another first. John Sokol's been listening along with me. I had Amazing Grace at my wedding. It wasn't sung quite like that, I have to say.
Cathy, I'm still kind of trying to digest, analyse the speech that Joe Biden has delivered. And what he was doing was walking a tightrope. He wanted to repudiate Donald Trump and Trumpism, although, of course, he didn't actually mention Donald Trump's name once in that speech. But he was reaching out to Donald Trump's supporters, that he would be governing for all Americans, that it was time to end this uncivil war, as he called it. And it talked about the tough work ahead. I also thought, you know, that we talk about a new dawn and a new era beginning, but you look at what Joe Biden has got to deal with: the pandemic, racism, the state of the economy, the state of the environment. All these massive issues in a country that is viciously divided and contesting what is truth and what are lies. And trying to establish a dialogue in that situation is going to be the most daunting challenge, I would say, for him. The sentiments of bringing the country together. But how do you do that?
Unity is not just the end, it is the means. The question is whether this country has the capacity for it. This is Amanda Gorman. She is the nation's first ever Youth Poet Laureate.
Mr. President, Dr. Biden, Madam Vice President, Mr. Emhoff, Americans, and the world. When day comes, we ask ourselves, where can we find light in this never-ending shade? The loss we carry, a sea we must wade. We've braved the belly of the beast. We've learned that quiet isn't always peace, and the norms and notions of what just isn't always just is. And yet the dawn is ours before we knew it. Somehow we do it. Somehow we've weathered and witnessed a nation that isn't broken, but simply unfinished. We, the successors of a country and a time where a skinny black girl descended from slaves and raised by a single mother can dream of becoming president, only to find herself reciting for one. And yes, we are far from polished, far from pristine, but that doesn't mean we are striving to form a union that is perfect. We are striving to forge our union with purpose, to compose a country committed to all cultures, colors, characters, and conditions of man. And so we lift our gazes not to what stands between us, but what stands before us. We close the divide because we know to put our future first, we must first put our differences aside. We lay down our arms so we can reach out our arms to one another. We seek harm to none and harmony for all. Let the globe, if nothing else, say this is true. That even as we grieved, we grew. That even as we hurt, we hoped. That even as we tired, we tried. That we'll forever be tied together, victorious. Not because we will never again know defeat, but because we will never again sow division. Scripture tells us to envision that everyone shall sit under their own vine and fig tree, and no one shall make them afraid. If we're to live up to our own time, then victory won't lie in the blade, but in all the bridges we've made. That is the promised glade, the hill we climb, if only we dare it, because being American is more than a pride we inherit. It's the past we step into and how we repair it. We've seen a force that would shatter our nation rather than share it, would destroy our country if it meant delaying democracy. And this effort very nearly succeeded. But while democracy can be periodically delayed, it can never be permanently defeated. In this truth, in this faith we trust, for while we have our eyes on the future, history has its eyes on us. This is the era of just redemption. We feared it in its inception. We did not feel prepared to be the heirs of such a terrifying hour, but within it we found the power to author a new chapter, to offer hope and laughter to ourselves. So, while once we asked, how could we possibly prevail over catastrophe? Now we assert, how could catastrophe possibly prevail over us? We will not march back to what was, but move to what shall be, a country that is bruised but whole, benevolent but bold, fierce and free. We will not be turned around or interrupted by intimidation, because we know our inaction and inertia will be the inheritance of the next generation. Our blunders become their burdens, but one thing is certain. If we merge mercy with might and might with right, then love becomes our legacy and change our children's birthright. So let us leave behind a country better than the one we were left. With every breath from my bronze-pounded chest, we will raise this wounded world into a wondrous one. We will rise from the gold-limbed hills of the West. We will rise from the wind-swept Northeast, where our forefathers first realized revolution. We will rise from the lake-rimmed cities of the Midwestern states. We will rise from the sun-baked South. We will rebuild, reconcile, and recover in every known nook of our nation, in every corner called our country. Our people, diverse and beautiful, will emerge battered and beautiful. When day comes, we step out of the shade of flame and unafraid. The new dawn blooms as we free it. For there is always light if only we're brave enough to see it, if only we're brave enough to be it.
Amanda Gorman, the nation's youngest ever poet laureate, 22 years old, and as a girl had a speech impediment like somebody else up on that stage, Joe Biden, who has overcome a stutter to get
Amanda
where he
Gorman.
has got to today.
Now for our benediction, I'm pleased to introduce
Giving that
Reverend
poem.
Dr. Sylvester Beeman, the pastor.
And we will now have the benediction from Dr.
Methodist
Sylvester
Episcopal
Beeman.
Church in Wilmington, Delaware, a friend of President Biden for 30 years.
As a nation and people of faith gathered in this historical moment, let us unite in prayer. God, we gather under the beauty of your holiness and the holiness of your beauty. We seek your face, your smile, your warm embrace. We petition you once more in this celebration. We pray for divine favor upon our President, Joseph R. Biden, and our First Lady, Dr. Jill Biden, and their family. We further ask that you would extend the same favor upon our Vice President, Kamala D. Harris, and our Second Gentleman, Doug Emhoff, and their family. More than ever, they and our nation need you. We need you, for in you we discover our common humanity. In our common humanity, we will seek out the wounded and bind their wounds. We will seek healing for those who are sick and diseased. We will mourn our dead. We will befriend the lonely, the least, and the left out. We will share our abundance with those who are hungry. We will do justly to the oppressed, acknowledge sin, and seek forgiveness, thus grasping reconciliation. In discovering our humanity, we will seek the good in and for all our neighbors. We will love the unlovable, remove the stigma of the so-called untouchables. We will care for our most vulnerable, our children, the elderly, emotionally challenged, and the poor. We will seek rehabilitation beyond correction. We will extend opportunity to those locked out of opportunity. We will make friends of our enemies. We will make friends of our enemies. People, your people, shall no longer raise up weapons against one another. We will rather use our resources for the national good and become a beacon of life and goodwill to the world. And neither shall we learn hatred anymore. We will lie down in peace and not make our neighbors afraid. In you, O God, we discover our humanity. In our humanity, we discover our commonness. Beyond the difference of color, creed, origin, political party, ideology, geography, and personal preferences. We'll become greater stewards of your environment, preserving the land, reaping from it a sustainable harvest, and securing its wonder and miracle-giving power for generations to come. This is our benediction, that from these hallowed grounds, where slaves labored to build this shrine and citadel to liberty and democracy, let us all acknowledge, from the indigenous Native American to those who recently received their citizenship, from the African American to those whose foreparents came from Europe and every corner of the globe, from the wealthy to those struggling to make it, from every human being regardless of their choices, that this is our country. As such, teach us, O God. As such, teach us, O God, to live in it, love in it, be healed in it, and reconcile to one another in it, lest we miss kingdom's goal. To your glory, majesty, dominion, and power forever. Hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. In the strong name of our collective faith. Amen.
Please remain standing as the Armed Forces Color Guard retires our national colors.
Reverend Beeman there closing out most of the spoken part, at least, of this inauguration ceremony. Now we have the exiting of the colors, and then the dignitaries will all leave as well. Let's just watch the colors go.
Ladies and gentlemen, please be seated and remain in your seats while the President and official party depart the platform. For safety reasons, your ushers will release your section in an organized manner, following the playing of our national march, The Stars and Stripes Forever.
And the new First Lady, Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden. Behind them, Kamala Harris, the new Vice President, and her husband, Doug Emhoff, leaving the stage. Not an inauguration that he necessarily would have wanted, much more socially distanced, many fewer people, not a national mall with a throng of crowds down below it. But John Sopel, you were listening along with me. I think they managed to capture that spirit that we see at every inauguration of celebration, of taking power. There is that sense of moment that comes from all of those bits of this ceremony.
Cathy, when you look at the Capitol from the Mall and you look up onto the West Front, it looks like any other inauguration, maybe a bit more socially distanced. It's when you look the other way down the Mall towards the Washington Monument and you see just the flags and no people that you realise that this is an exceptional inauguration. And in the emptiness, you see the twin issues that Joe Biden has got to grapple with. The pandemic, one of the reasons why there are no crowds, and the security situation. It was 2 weeks ago today that Donald Trump was just finishing up his speech at the Ellipse, and the crowd moved towards the Capitol. 2 weeks ago, unbelievably, astonishingly, I was reporting on a mob taking over the Capitol. It was the triumph of the mob. 2 weeks later, we are back, and we're reporting on the triumph of democracy. And maybe it was always destined that that would happen. But I have to say that 2 weeks ago, it didn't seem like that. It seemed that US democracy was in a moment of grave peril and fragility. And the fact that today has gone with such normality, and with the speeches in the order that they were laid out, and with the address that Joe Biden gave, I think there'll be a huge number of people across America, Republican and Democrat, who will maybe be breathing a sigh of relief. They may not have signed up to Biden. They may absolutely loathe what he stands for. They may still be wishing with all their heart that Donald Trump is the next president. But if you believe in democracy, then there has been today the peaceful transfer of power.
Yeah, and for those members of Congress who were sitting on that stage today, who 2 weeks ago were cowering under their desks, afraid for their lives. I have spoken to many of them who said they have a sense of PTSD. Calling their family members, and they didn't know if they were going to make it through the end of the day. And for those members of Congress, both Republican and Democrat, to sit there and watch this transition of power take place, and to hear Republicans as well as Democrats today talk about the need for unity, as you say, restores a sense that American democracy is resilient. It may not be at its strongest moment ever, but it is resilient, and this inauguration ceremony helps the country heal just by the fact that it took place without incident for the last 2 hours on the steps of the Capitol. That in and of itself has been an important part of the process of rebuilding faith in America around the world and rebuilding confidence in politics and in democracy and in leadership in this country for Democrat and Republican alike. Let's go to the friend of now Vice President Kamala Harris, Dr. Shelley Young Tompkins. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Tompkins. I imagine watching your childhood friend being inaugurated as the Vice President must have been an extraordinary emotional moment for you. You could feel the emotion on the stage. Dr. Young Tompkins, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
I imagine that was an emotional moment for you.
Very emotional, very emotional.
To unite Americans in a bid to surmount all the challenges that the country is facing. Talking about dealing with the coronavirus pandemic, ensuring that as many Americans as possible manage to get the vaccine, and of course calling on Americans to support his presidency in a bid to turn around the America's battered economy. Well, the road ahead, of course, will not be as smooth. Many challenges lie ahead in uniting the United States of America. He has also vowed to deal with domestic terror, this coming at a time when 2 weeks ago, thousands of people, stormed the U.S. Capitol in a bid to stop the certification of his win. We continue to track what's happening down there. Of course, a historic day for America. Joe Biden becoming the 46th president of the United States, and Vice President Kamala Harris becoming the first woman, and of course the first woman of color, to become the vice president in the United States of America. A few inches away from the presidency, that is Kamala Harris. Well, we are back here, of course, to give you some analyses and, of course, to give you some viewpoints on what exactly has just happened. And XN Iraqi has been with us since this process started. And XN, you've heard it from Joe Biden, of course, acknowledging that it's not going to be a walk in the park, for the next 4 years for him, vowing to crush domestic terror, unite Americans. Of course, uniting Americans is going to be a big challenge for him, don't you think so? XN.
It was the climax of a long weekend moment, and I made a few observations that surprised me. One of them is that everybody in that particular place was wearing a mask. I would want to know what President Donald Trump would have thought of everybody wearing a mask or a mask in such an occasion. What came clear from this inauguration is that the reality of COVID-19 has really sunk at the highest level of the American administration. And the new president seems to acknowledge that it is a very big task ahead to make sure that everybody is vaccinated and to make sure that the problem of COVID and its effect on the economy is addressed. Mm-hmm. But one thing came at the back of my mind. Where was President Donald Trump when all this was taking place? Because I didn't see him being shown anywhere in the media, mm-hmm. which was surprising because at least they should have showed us 1 or 2 minutes showing us where he is and what he is doing, but that was not shown. But everybody expected some demonstrations because of what happened earlier this month. There was none. Some people even speculated there would be some martial law declared by the former president. That never happened. Mm-hmm. And that's why President Joe Biden was very clear when he said it was a triumph of democracy. And he seems to have acknowledged that he has work made for him. And even went further than talking to Americans only, but he even reached to American allies abroad. And he assured them that they are going to work together, that they are going to undo what probably President Trump did. I think there wasn't a big surprise in the inauguration. It is not there wasn't anything that was very extraordinary. Mm-hmm. I think that is what was expected. Yeah. Remember, it's a tradition that has been there for 244 years, mm-hmm. perfected in every inauguration. The only thing that surprised me is not to have the president who is departing in this inauguration. But I was happy to see the former President George Bush. Yeah. I was able to see President Obama. Mm-hmm. That was very encouraging. And the song Amazing Grace being sung, a song that President Obama once sang in one of the occasions. Yeah. So what we are waiting now is how is President Joe Biden going to achieve his political and economic objectives? Mm-hmm. I think that is what everybody is looking forward to. Mm-hmm. As President Biden vows to unite Americans, the former President Donald Trump, in his message, he said that he's just around. What exactly does that mean? I mean, we haven't
seen or had Joe Biden acknowledging the former president. He has not actually mentioned him in his speech. And neither have we seen Donald Trump, mentioning the name of Joe Biden. This is likely to be, a stormy kind of relationship going forward between the two presidents, right?
I think President Joe Biden said that the American democracy has been tested and has been found to work. So even in this situation, it is still going to work. I think what is meant by the fact that President Trump is around is simple. 47% of Americans voted for him. Mm-hmm. He is leaving the White House. They are not leaving America.
Yeah.
They are there. All those people who voted for him are going to be around. So inevitably, his royalists are going to be around.
Your camera is not stable at all.
They're going to be watching every move. And they're going to ask a very simple question: where is our leader? Because he had a lot of followers who believed in him, so much that they could even go and storm the seat of power. Mm-hmm. So I don't think Donald Trump is going anywhere. He's going to be around. Yeah. His faithful followers are going to be around. Mm-hmm. And don't be surprised in a few weeks' time people are going to start asking, even in Kenya, why is Donald Trump? He was always in Twitter. Yeah. He made Twitter become an official channel of communication from State House. Mm-hmm. So we are going to start missing him and wondering where he is. Yeah. Because he left a legacy that will be very hard to undo in the long run. Supreme Court, federal judges, resetting alliances with the American allies, and demystifying the presidency of the United States. So he's going to be around for a long time.
And you actually talking about his presence. We know that most major social media sites have removed him from their platforms. Like for example on Twitter, where he had more than 78 million followers. And how do you think, or what other modes of communication do you think Donald Trump is likely to reach out to his followers going forward?
Remember, before Donald Trump became the president, he was a media person. Remember his famous program, You Are Fired? So I suspect that if he doesn't use Twitter, he is going to go to TV, radio, and you probably get a lot of followings. So he has not run out of options when it comes to communicating to his followers.
Okay.
There are enough options that he can use.
Mm-hmm. Very well. As you can see on your screen, that is the former Vice President, Mike Pence, actually, walking out of the U.S. Capitol. We want now to cross over to the United States and on straight to the state of Massachusetts, Boston. We have Simon Kirubi. He's a Kenyan-born investor who works in the United States. He's also a policy analyst. He's now joining us from the state capital in Boston. Simon, good afternoon in the U.S. Hello, Simon. Can you hear me? Simon is coming live to us from the state of Massachusetts, and he's actually outside the capital in Boston. Simon, if you can hear me, good afternoon. Well, I think we're not getting him. We'll be talking to him. That is Vice President, the former Vice President, Mike Pence, with his wife, leaving, and of course, they were the most senior officials, who attended the Joe Biden's inauguration. His boss definitely missing out. He flew out from the White House and, of course, en route to Florida. The question is, was he actually watching this inauguration? And that's a question that we're asking ourselves here with XN Iraqi. You are talking about, the modes that, the former president, Donald Trump is likely to use to continue reaching out to his millions of followers. And there are suggestions that he's likely to start a Trump TV. Do you think it's likely to get off the ground?
I suspect it will be very successful because he has a critical mass of followers. I also suspect that beyond Twitter, there are other forums or platforms we can use for communicating to our followers. We have Telegram, we have Signal, and there's no limit to the number of platforms we can come up with. People are innovative and creative. So I think, in my opinion, there's no way you are going to silence Donald Trump if you won't talk to the masses. He has alternatives.
Yeah.
And remember, he has money. He has money. Don't worry what people say that he might be auctioned and so on. I think he has some money as a former president and a former businessman. If you listen to his speech, he said that he saw buildings, when he was in private business, he saw the buildings going up. And he thought that in the same way he had reached the upper limits of buildings, he wanted to become the president so that he can expand that dream. So I think he doesn't have, he has a lot of opportunities to communicate with his followers. He could even start holding political rallies like the way Kenyans do. It's not impossible. And I'm sure there will be attendance there.
Well, let's try now to get over to Simon in Boston, Massachusetts. Good afternoon, Simon. If you can hear me, how are you doing down there? Simon, if you can hear me, good afternoon. How are you doing? It looks like we're still having a challenge with the audio there. Simon, good afternoon. Well, we still have a challenge there, but we'll still continue to try and get through to Simon Kirubi, who is in Boston, actually outside the Boston capital in the state of Massachusetts, to give us an update. We still continue to discuss what we have just actually said. Help us understand here. I mean, the culture has always been the outgoing president is supposed to take the incoming president around White House. This has not happened. How will Joe Biden get to go around the White House, without his predecessor, taking him around?
I guess he has one big advantage. He has the former president, Barack Obama, and a lot of people who work for Barack Obama knows a lot about the State House and the systems, so they will help him navigate through the White House. But I don't know why we are surprised that President Donald Trump did not come for inauguration. He has always been an unconventional president. So for him not to come for inauguration, for him not to take his successor around the White House, it was not very surprising. But because of traditions, because of the systems that have been there for over two centuries, I think President Joe Biden has no problem navigating the White House and the U.S. government systems. He'll comfortably fit.
Some of the issues that Joe Biden has talked about, in terms of trying to work them. One of them is, of course, joining or taking America back to the Paris Agreement, whereby we know that Joe Biden is a keen campaigner of climate change. How soon do you think this is likely to happen? Then the other thing. The Donald Trump's administration has somehow, appended trade ties between China and the U.S. Do you see Donald Trump, Joe Biden, trying to undo the trade mess that was done by his predecessor?
I think the first question is on climatic change, and if my memory serves me right, President Joe Biden got the former Secretary of State, John Kerry to be a special envoy for that particular sector, climatic change. So I think he might use an executive order if the American system, if I understand the American system very well, and that might take America back to the Paris Accord. Remember that America was one of the few countries that did not take part, that withdrew from Paris Accord. All the others are there. And you can't do much in climatic change when the US is not there.
Yeah.
It probably contributes 25% of all the greenhouse...
The green gas
emissions. So you cannot make a lot of headway without the US. So I think that would be one of the agendas Joe Biden is going to put on the table and make sure that US is back to Paris Accord. On the trade with China, I don't think anybody can avoid trading with China today.
No.
Remember, China was not affected by COVID-19 as much as US and a lot of European countries. So it might be that from now henceforth, China will be the locomotive of the world economy. So you cannot avoid China in terms of trade, whether you want or not. So I see a lot of rapprochement between Joe Biden and the Chinese leadership as soon as he becomes the president. I probably expect a summit in future where they're going to talk about trade deals, or not trade deals, but trade laws, so that the original trade between US and China becomes as vibrant as it was. And that would be good for America and good for China and good for the whole world. Remember, everybody wants to come out of the global recession because of COVID-19. And any effort that Joe Biden takes, any effort Xi Jinping takes, or any president takes, will be very much supported globally.
And in terms of, you know, enhancing ties between the US and Africa, and more specifically to do with, you know, with Kenya, do you think Joe Biden will be, Africa is on top of his agenda?
Not many developed countries have Africa at the top of the agenda, because every country has its own strategic interests. But I guess he will be much better than Donald Trump in terms of dealing with Africa. I don't expect the new president, Joe Biden, to ever call Africa a shithole. I know the American ambassador in Kenya is resigning from effective, I think, today.
Keon Makata.
So he is definitely going to set a new ambassador. And I expect the new ambassador is going to continue with the good relationship between the US and Kenya. Remember that Joe Biden was a vice president to Barack Obama. So I expect a lot of good policies that President Obama had towards Africa to continue or to be revived. So I think Africa is going to enjoy a very good relationship with Joe Biden's presidency.
And the other thing that, you know, a lot of questions are being asked around, it's true that, you know, Joe Biden was President Obama's vice president for the 80 years that President Obama was in office. How is Joe Biden going to ensure that his presidency doesn't look Obama-ish, for lack of a better word?
I think that's an issue people are already raising, because if you look at most of his key officers or key officials, they have worked for Obama administration. And some people have argued that if you bring back all those officials, then you probably have people thinking the same way, people who like diversity of ideas and diversity of perspectives. So what I suspect is that maybe towards the middle of his administration, some of those officials may start maybe leaving the administration, and he may bring new blood. That would be good, because he doesn't want to be seen as a continuation of Obama administration. I think Joe Biden will do all he can to set his own agenda and to make his administration unique, so that in times to come, we can talk of Biden's administration, not continuation of Obama's administration. But inevitably, Obama's shadow, because of his 8 years in White House, will hang over Joe Biden. No question about that.
And before I let you go, how will Joe Biden strike a balance, you know, between, you know, crafting his own legacy and trying to delete the legacy or undo the legacy of his predecessor?
I don't envy Joe Biden's position, because in the 4 years that Donald Trump was in the White House, he changed a lot of things. And there's a risk that by trying to undo Trump's legacy, Joe Biden will be tied up and forget his legacy and building his own legacy. So he needs to strike a very good balance so that he doesn't spend all his time fighting what Obama did, not Obama, but what Trump did, instead of building his own legacy.
Yeah.
Because some of the things that Trump did are very hard to undo. For example, the Supreme Court judges, you cannot tell them to go home one day.
Yeah.
So he has to strike that balance. He can undo what he can, but he must be cognizant of the fact that the legacy, some of the legacies of Donald Trump will be there for a long time.
Very well. XN, thank you so very much indeed for finding time to be with us here. We'll continue to engage you as the Joe Biden's presidency continue to take shape. I can see you have a point to make.
There's one more point before I go. Joe Biden is 78 years old.
Yeah.
And by becoming the president at that age, it shows that whatever age you are in Kenya or anywhere in the world, the best years of your life are yet to come.
You know, ending your appearance on a political note, if you like it. But of course, so in 4 years' time, he'll be 82 years.
And he may want another term.
So he's likely, if he gets 86 by the time he's done with his presidency.
I wish I could tell the Kenyan public how many years I have to go before I am Joe Biden's age.
We can always discuss that. But thank you so very much indeed for finding time to be with us here. This has been a special coverage of the U.S., the inauguration of Joe Biden, the 46th president of the United States. The 9 o'clock news is coming up next. Stay right here. We are back shortly.